Ever catch yourself, I don't know, just kind of daydreaming about hopping into a time machine?
Yeah, yeah. Who hasn't, right?
Well, today's deep dive, this is right up your alley.
Oh, really?
We are tackling time travel.
Oh, right.
Not just the science fiction kind,
Okay.
but the real deal,
Right.
or at least the tantalizing possibility of it.
I like it.
So we're diving deep into Nick Redfern's book, Time Travel, the science and science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, he does not shy away from the big questions.
Okay.
We're talking Einstein's theories,
Right.
those bizarre time slip stories,
Mm-hmm.
and even the possibility that some UFOs might be piloted by, wait for it, us, from the future.
Yeah.
Get ready to have your mind blown, because we're going all in on whether time travel is actually possible.
Well, and what's so captivating about time travel is that it really kind of straddles this line between what we know from physics
Right.
and what we can only dream about. So on one hand, you have like Einstein's theory of relativity, which is not just some sci-fi mumbo jumbo.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit.
Sure.
Einstein's theory. This is kind of a big deal when it comes to time travel, right?
It's the foundation. I mean, Einstein, he flipped our understanding of time on its head.
Okay.
You know, he said it's not constant, but it's relative.
Okay.
And it's woven into this fabric of space-time, and it can actually be bent, it can be warped.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it this way. The faster you move through space,
Yeah.
the slower time goes for you compared to someone standing still.
Right.
So that's called time dilation.
So that whole thing about astronauts aging a tiny bit slower in space because they're traveling at super high speeds,
Right.
that's not just a theory.
No, that's actually been proven.
Wow.
It's like taking a teeny tiny step into the future.
Wow.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Physicists are exploring even more extreme distortions of space-time, and that's where things get really interesting.
You're talking about black holes, wormholes,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Imagine a place where gravity is so intense
Yeah.
that it warps time so severely that not even light can escape.
Hmm.
That's a black hole. Now, we're not saying you'd want to take a vacation to one.
Right.
Surviving the trip that's a whole other problem.
Right, right.
But theoretically, getting close to a black hole could fling you through time, probably way into the future.
Okay, so black holes are like a one-way ticket to who knows when.
Right.
What about wormholes?
Okay.
Those kind of sound a bit more like the time portals you see in movies.
Yeah, they're like the holy grail of time travel.
Right.
A wormhole is like a shortcut through space-time,
Okay.
connecting two distant points.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, you could step into one and then pop out in a different era.
Sign me up. Right.
Right.
Except there's a catch. We haven't actually found a wormhole yet.
Not for lack of trying, right?
Right.
They're still in the realm of theoretical physics. But the fact that our understanding of the universe allows for their existence, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It is. It is pretty amazing. But while those cosmic shortcuts are still on the drawing board,
Right.
there were people who claim to have stumbled into some weird time warps without the need for spaceships
Yeah.
or fancy technology.
Oh.
We're talking about time slips. And there are some of the most baffling stories out there.
Yeah, time slips are like glitches in the Matrix.
Right,
They're
like-
these accounts from people who say they've been jolted out of their own time, if only for like a fleeting moment.
Yeah.
And one of the most compelling stories comes from a man named John Davis. Picture this. He's driving through the English countryside when he encounters this group of soldiers.
Hold on. Soldiers in 21st century England.
Yeah.
Were they doing some kind of historical reenactment?
Not quite.
Okay.
These soldiers weren't in modern uniforms. They were dressed in 17th century garb carrying muskets. They seemed just as surprised to see him as he was to see them.
Oh, wow.
Davis was convinced he had slipped back in time to 1643 to the site of the Battle of Hopton Heath.
So no DeLorean, no flux capacitor, just a wrong turn, and bam, you're in the middle of a historical battle.
According to Davis, that's exactly what happened. And his story isn't an isolated incident. There are accounts of time slips happening all over the world, often in places that already have a sort of mystical reputation.
You're talking about places like Skinwalker Ranch.
Exactly, Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh.
That place is like a magnet for the paranormal.
It is.
And that includes reports of time slips. People have seen things there that seem to defy explanation, like
Right.
the U.S. cavalry riding across the land long after they were stationed there.
Right.
It's like catching glimpses of the past bleeding into the present.
It's almost as if these locations have like a higher concentration of temporal weirdness, like some kind of time-space distortion field.
That's one theory.
Yeah.
Some researchers believe these time slips are connected to the land itself, to like magnetic fields or geological formations that create these little pockets of temporal instability. Others think it's more paranormal, maybe even connected to consciousness itself. And of course, you have skeptics who dismiss it all as hoaxes or misinterpretations.
Right. It's like with anything strange and unexplainable, there are always going to be different interpretations.
Right.
But what's so fascinating about these time slip stories, whether they're true or not, is that they make you question the very nature of time.
Exactly. They challenge our kind of comfortable notion that time is fixed and linear, suggesting that it might be far more fluid and mysterious than we realize.
Okay, so we've got these like tantalizing hints that maybe, just maybe, time isn't as rigid as we think it is.
Right.
But what about those who claim to have time travel down to a science?
Yeah.
We have to talk about John Titor.
Right.
This guy who became an internet legend.
Yes.
By claiming he was a time traveler from the future.
Yeah, John Titor is, he's a rabbit hole all his own. Right. He popped up on these online forums in the early 2000s claiming to be from the year 2130. And he wasn't there to just, you know, sightsee.
Right.
He painted a pretty grim picture of the future.
Yeah.
He's talking about civil war and nuclear devastation.
Yeah, not exactly a cheery postcard from the future.
No.
What's Redfern's take on this whole thing?
Well, so Redfern, he kind of dives into all the different theories surrounding Titor.
Right.
So some people think that it was all just an elaborate hoax.
Right.
A really clever piece of online storytelling.
All right.
Others think that it might have been some kind of like social experiment.
Like to see how people would react to these predictions of doom and gloom.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Like plant the seeds of a dystopian future and then, you know, watch how people respond online.
Wow.
But then there's the third group.
Yeah.
Right. The ones who believe that Titor might have actually been telling the truth.
Right.
That he was a genuine time traveler from a future that, you know, we'd rather avoid.
Which is a pretty chilling thought.
Yeah.
But if he was real, why all the secrecy? Why not just, you know, I don't know, prevent these disasters he was warning about?
Well, that's where the paradoxes come in, right?
Right, right.
A lot of time travel theories, they involve these ideas of alternate timelines.
Okay.
Or, you know, the butterfly effect.
Right.
Where even small changes to the past could have massive unforeseen consequences in the future.
So maybe he was trying to fix things without actually changing the past.
Right.
Whatever that is.
Right. It makes your head spin a bit, doesn't it?
It really does.
But that's what's so compelling about Titor's story, right?
Right.
Whether he was a time traveler or a prankster or something in between, he really tapped into our fascination with the unknown.
Yeah.
And the possibility that our actions today could ripple through time in ways that we can't even imagine.
It definitely makes you think twice about those, like, late-night doom-scrolling sessions.
Right.
But speaking of blending fact and fiction, we have to talk about the, I guess, granddaddy of time travel mysteries.
Yes.
The Philadelphia experiment.
Yes.
This is practically a rite of passage for anyone interested in this stuff.
Of course, yeah.
So the Philadelphia experiment, this is one of those stories that just won't quit.
Right.
It supposedly happened in 1943 and involved the USS Eldridge, which was a Navy destroyer.
Okay.
The goal, according to the legend, was to make this ship invisible to radar.
Right, like the Navy's attempt at a stealth ship.
Yes.
But with a sci-fi twist.
Exactly, exactly.
But as the story goes, things went way beyond just, you know, disappearing from radar screens.
Okay.
The Eldridge allegedly vanished completely, reappearing miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, before teleporting back to Philadelphia.
Hold on. Teleportation? Like they accidentally invented, like, Star Trek technology back in the 1940s.
That's the claim.
Wow.
But it gets weirder.
Okay.
There's stories about the crew being affected in all these horrific ways. Wow. Some, like, fused to the metal of the ship.
Oh, my God.
Others vanishing entirely. And some even supposedly flung into the future.
This sounds less like a science experiment and more like a horror movie.
Right. It's a wild tale.
Yeah.
Now, the Navy, of course, denies that any of this ever happened.
Right.
But that hasn't stopped people from speculating.
Of course, of course.
Some think that the experiment was an attempt to create some kind of, you know, invisibility cloak.
Right.
Using electromagnetic fields, and it just went haywire.
Right. And the stories about the crew, that's where, like, the time travel theories really take hold.
Right.
Like, maybe those sailors who disappeared were accidentally sent through time.
Exactly. Yeah. There are accounts of sailors saying that they were hurled into, like, the 1980s.
Wow.
Before being yanked back to 1943.
Oh, my goodness.
It's all very hazy, but there's this one detail that's especially intriguing.
Okay, I'm all ears.
There's a story about a bar fight involving some of these sailors who were supposedly on the Eldridge.
Right.
And in the middle of this brawl, some of them just vanished into thin air.
Okay, now that's a bar story for the ages.
Right.
Did anyone ever figure out what happened to them?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
We're talking about this alleged event, shrouded in secrecy, fueled by decades of speculation.
Right.
It's impossible to say for sure.
Right.
But it definitely adds to the mystique.
It's like the Philadelphia experiment itself.
Right.
Like a mystery wrapped in a riddle, wrapped in a tinfoil hat.
Precise.
But here's where things take an even more mind-bending turn.
Okay.
What if some of the things that we attribute to aliens, like UFOs, are actually signs of time travelers?
Ooh.
I've always been fascinated by the idea that some UFO sightings could be visitors from our own future.
Okay.
Not some far-off galaxy.
Yeah, it's a theory that has a lot of proponents.
Right.
And it would explain why they're so good at, like, hiding in plain sight. Like, if future humans have cracked the code of time travel, they probably wouldn't want to cause a scene, right? They'd want to blend in, observe us, without drawing too much attention.
So maybe they're using, like, advanced technology to disguise themselves as something that we wouldn't immediately recognize as, you know, a threat or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Like those classic flying saucer-shaped UFOs.
Exactly, yeah. It's a way to, like, study us, to maybe learn from our past mistakes without, like, disrupting the timeline too much.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it would also explain why some of the descriptions of aliens we hear about seem almost human-like.
Right, and think about, for example, the 1980 Rendlesham Forest incident.
Right.
One of the most well-documented UFO sightings in history.
Right.
One of the witnesses, Jim Peniston, claimed that the beings that he encountered told him they were time travelers from a dystopian future.
Wait, they actually told him that?
Yeah.
What did they want?
He said that they were collecting DNA samples, trying to repair their broken world.
Wow.
They weren't hostile, but they were desperate.
So maybe those stories of alien abductions and medical experiments, maybe some of them are actually future humans trying to solve problems in their own timeline.
It's a chilling thought, but it's not entirely implausible.
Right, it really is.
It's a theory that really challenges the way that we think about these encounters, right?
Right.
What if we're not dealing with extraterrestrial visitors,
but
with, like, echoes of our own future?
That's a whole other level of weirdness.
It is.
And it makes you wonder, like, if time travel is real, how much of our history has been shaped by visitors from the future?
Right.
I mean, have they been, like, I don't know, nudging us in certain directions this whole time?
It's a question that leads us down some pretty wild rabbit holes.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from the mind-bending physics of black holes and wormholes to those, like, what-if stories of time slips and future humans, like, masquerading as aliens. It's a lot to process.
It is.
What's the one big takeaway you hope our listener walks away with from all of this?
You know, I think the biggest takeaway is that time itself is far stranger and more complex than we give it credit for, you know? We tend to think of it as this rigid, linear thing.
Yeah.
But what if it's more like a flowing river full of twists and turns and hidden depths?
It's like we're finally starting to realize that the water's deeper than we thought.
Right.
Maybe even, like, teeming with possibilities that we can barely even fathom.
Exactly. And if time travel is possible, whether it's through technology that, you know, we haven't invented yet, or some, like, quirk of consciousness that we're just beginning to understand, it means that the past, present, and future might be intertwined in ways that we're only just starting to grasp.
It's almost like realizing you've been living in, like, a one-story house your whole life. And then discovering there's a whole network of secret rooms and passageways, like, hidden beneath the floorboards.
And who knows what we might find in those hidden rooms.
Exactly.
Different versions of ourselves. Lost technologies. I mean, the possibilities are both exhilarating and a little bit terrifying.
No kidding. No kidding.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, though, if future humans are really visiting us, are they just like curious tourists, or are they trying to like steer us in a certain direction,
Right.
I mean, we've all seen those movies where someone travels back in time and accidentally messes everything up.
Exactly. That's the paradox of time travel, isn't it? If you could go back and change the past, would you even want to?
Right.
Or would you risk creating these ripples that just unravel the fabric of reality as we know it?
And some of those ripples might be even more bizarre than others.
Right.
Like, what if the reason that those men in black are so good at, like, covering up UFO sightings is that they're not government agents at all, but time travelers themselves?
Oh.
Maybe they're here to make sure that we don't screw up the timeline too badly.
Now, there's a thought.
Right.
It would explain why they're always so darn mysterious and intimidating.
Right.
Like, they've got a lot riding on keeping things under wraps.
Imagine the pressure.
I know, right?
But, all this talk about time travel makes you wonder, what if some of those, like, unexplained events in history weren't caused by, like, aliens or secret societies, but by our future selves trying to, like, I don't know, tidy up their past mistakes?
It's a fascinating concept.
It is.
What if those UFO crash sites, like Roswell, weren't extraterrestrial visitors at all?
Right.
But just, like, time travel experiments gone wrong.
Right. Or maybe those strange disappearances throughout history were just people taking an accidental detour through time.
Exactly.
It definitely puts a new spin on things.
He does.
It's like, forget Area 51. The real mystery is what's happening in Area 52, the time travel division.
Yeah, right. Maybe one day we'll get access to those top secret files and finally have some answers.
Right.
But until then, I think the most important thing is to just keep an open mind.
Right.
And remember that reality is often stranger than fiction.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. And, even if we never perfect time travel technology, there's still something incredibly powerful about the idea that the choices we make today can ripple through time.
Yes.
Shaping not just our own futures, but, like, countless other possibilities.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it?
It really is.
We're not just living in the present, we're shaping the past and the future with every decision we make.
It's true. It's a big responsibility.
It is.
Well, on that note, we're going to leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
If you could send a message back in time to your younger self, what would it be? What advice would you give, knowing what you know now? Think about it. And until next time, keep exploring the mysteries of the universe and maybe even time itself.